Today we're working on a 2000 Toyota Sienna, and the problem is the horn won't honk. You can eliminate a few problems by trying the remote. If the panic button works, you can eliminate the problem being the horn or the horn relay. If you wanted to replace the horn relay, it's in here. There's a latch here, here, and back here, and remove this cover. With the cover off and turned upside down, you can see the location of the horn relay is here, which would be this relay right here. You could take that out and replace it with a new one to see if that solved the problem. My problem is not with the horn or the horn relay, so I'm going to disconnect the power from the battery before I start taking apart the steering column. I've already loosened this with a 10mm wrench. Take the negative battery cable off and move it out of the way so we don't short something out. We're going to wait about 15 minutes before we take off the airbag. To remove the airbag, there are two screws that are Torx 27. First you have to remove this little round disc here, just pops out. This is on the driver's side, just next to the cruise control. Remove the small plastic cover at the bottom left of the radio control. And undo this Torx screw right here. And that whole thing will come up, and then you can get to the Torx screw underneath there that keeps the airbag on. Undo the two captive screws on each side with a T27 Torx driver. You do not back all the way out. They're captive screws. Just keep backing them out until you're pretty sure all the threads are undone. Do this on both sides. Once you have both screws undone on each side, jiggle the airbag and it should come on out. Underneath, you'll find the wire going to the airbag. You can, there. Now that you have the airbag out of the way, temporarily hook the negative terminal back up. Once you have the battery temporarily hooked back up, here is the voltage coming in. It's hot all the time. It's this red wire over here going to the switch that completes it to ground. You can check from here to something you know is a good ground and see what the voltage is. From here, I just stuck it in the ignition there as a ground. I'm reading 11 volts DC. Sometimes not getting a good connection there. 11 volts. You should get something 11 or 12 volts. Cut the battery back off temporarily. We need to check continuity to make sure that we have a good connection between these switches here and the steering wheel frame itself. So, with our multimeter set on ohms, when we touch the two probes together, we'll get a sound. So we'll check continuity between the ground of the frame and the switch itself when we push this down. So the points are okay on the switch here. There's no need to change that out. You can clean it off. You can take it loose here and here. Same thing on this one. Just take an Allen wrench, take these loose, and you can clean them if you want to. But I'm not going to do it because then the continuity is okay. The next step is to check underneath the clock spring, which is in here. There's a ball bearings that can lose continuity. In order to get to them, we have to take the steering wheel off and the clock spring. So we have to disconnect this first here, unplug this. With a 19mm socket, or I think a 3/4 fits, loosen this nut that holds the steering wheel on. Now you can wiggle the steering column with both hands, which I've already done, and you can loosen it and it pulls on off. Feed the airbag connection back through, and now you have the whole steering column off. The steering wheel, not column. Now you're going to take this plastic housing off. There's a screw here, and then one down under here. If you want to remember which goes where, the black screws go up here, and then the one bronze screw goes down at the bottom down here. You can pull the housing off. There's an insert that pops out here, and then over here this just slides down off of it, and you can take the bottom part off. Okay. Then there are 4 screws that keep the clock spring on. This is the clock spring right here. This has a ribbon with about 4 or 5 wires in it that's wound around here, so it can make connection and then uncoil and uncoil when you turn the steering wheel. But there's 4 screws, one in here, one here, and then one up here, and one over here. Take those loose and you can take the clock spring out. Once you get the plastic housing off the bottom and up out of the way, you don't need to take it all the way, the top and all the way off, just move it up out of the way. Take those 4 screws off, and you can just lift the clock spring out. It's got plugged in the back here. You can undo these plugs. This one's a little bit unusual for the airbag. This back part springs off, and then you can lift it out. So you have to undo this back part. I might need both hands to do it. And then this one out here. Once you get it off, you can check it with the multimeter to see if there's a problem in the clock spring. This just makes extra sure that the airbag thing stays in. This pushes up. I just pulled it off. Then you can pull this one out. You can pull this one out. In the back of these have this little depression here. You press that on to get it to come out. Same thing on the black one here. So with the multimeter, you can individually touch each one of these probes here and then check them on the back. Sorry, check them on the back over here. It turns out when you check one on the right side over here, you have to check that over here on the left side going across, and vice versa. You check it on the left side, you have to check it on the right side here. You'll get continuity on each one of them. If the cock spring is good, if it's bad, one of them might, the horn one might be broken or something, because this is a ribbon wire inside here, and moving back and forth over a period of time, it could go bad. This one's okay, I checked it. It takes 3 hands to do it. So I couldn't video it, but you don't want to have to replace this because it's a little bit expensive. So be careful taking it in and out that you don't break it. Now we have to remove this plastic housing that holds the turn signal control and the speed cruise control. There are 3 screws that hold it, 2 up at the top and then 1 down at the bottom, and then it just pulls right out. Those are the 2 top screws and then 1 down at the bottom. In order to get it loose, there's 3 screws. Then you can pull this up and gently out over the steering column. Once you get all that out of the way, you'll see that there are ball bearings in here. And if these are all corroded and dirty, that's one of the reasons you're not getting a good ground through this steering column. And what I did, I just used some brake cleaner and clean this off. When you do that, put a piece of cardboard down in the floorboard of the car, because a whole bunch of rusty stuff is going to come out of there. Then once you clean that, you need to put some dielectric grease in there. So what we're going to use here is some brake cleaner, and we're going to spray it right on these ball bearings in here. And the stuff comes down on the cardboard. I'd already cleaned it once, so there's not as much stuff coming out. But now they're nice and clean, so now we're going to put a little dielectric grease in there. Before we put the grease in, I'm just going to blow the bulbs out a little bit with a compressed air. What I'm going to use to re-grease these is some dielectric grease, and just put it on there. I suppose you could clean it with WD-40. That would also clean it pretty good, but I don't think it would lubricate it enough, so you probably need to put grease on these, or you're going to be back in here when they're giving you trouble. Now we'll just start the reassembly process. Putting this back in, the 3 screws that held this. Okay, 1 up here, 1 here, and then down here, this one down here. Okay, we'll put the negative post back on, and we'll tighten it here. While you got it off, it's probably a good time to clean the battery post. Okay, the battery's connected. The horn wire is hot all the time, so even though we don't have a key in the ignition, the horn should work. And it does. Problem solved.